Alrighty, hello everybody, and welcome back to the 1K World Cup 2026 presented by Joke. We are back with the second match of the round of 16 weekend. It is going to be Mexico taking on Croatia to see who will be advancing in this winner's bracket. Mexico, a pretty known commodity coming in at the 6th seed, and Croatia, the newcomers around, trying to see if they can pull off the upset from the 11th seed. As always, my name is Sparky, and I am joined in the commentary booth this time around by none other than Epic Man 2. How's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going pretty good. Been for a bunch of matches today, and I'm here to endure even more as we venture forth into the 1K World Cup 2026, having started off this weekend, and now we are off with the round of 16. A lot of matches to gather at here and there, and especially with Mexico versus Croatia, this one's going to be looking to be pretty interesting, as this is going to be our 6th seeded against the 11th seed, so almost close around the center, just kind of like walking around with the protractor, as it does look like things are slightly in the middle, and this is going to be a pretty interesting 2v2 situation between both these teams here.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is going to be a real test of where these two teams' headspaces are at. The map pool as a whole, a little bit different than conventional. We've foregone protects and bans. Everything is on the table, so you can't kind of like ignore the SV elephant in the room anymore. There's more hybrids than there are LN and rice charts. Not combined, but I mean categorically, 4 versus 3. You know how it is. And it feels like the hybrids are really going to be where these two teams are going to cut their teeth. These are mixed bags. There's some that are harder than others. The rice charts are pretty much an accuracy test. LN, how good can you release? Kind of being the name of the game there. The speed pick is a bit of a double-edged sword this time around. Pretty short in the grand scheme of things compared to other speed maps that we've had in years prior.
100.
So it's going to be interesting seeing how these two teams go up against each other.
Absolutely, that's very well said there over there, Sparky, and especially with how we can see both these teams doing. Mexico just rolled 100.
Oh my god, get them to roll in the Discord.
Bro, what? I think this is like the very first time I've actually seen a 100 roll ever in my like 3 years of actually caring about mania tournaments. Like, what even is this?
The only thing better than seeing 100 is seeing a 1 immediately afterwards. And like I said, we SQ the bans. There are no protects. We just go right on into this. Mexico, because of that 100, is going to be first to pick. And I imagine the fear sets in just based on the reaction that they were hoping they could get rid of a map they didn't practice. So, or maybe excitement, because now they don't have to worry about something that they like getting removed from the pool. So this will give us a pretty good glimpse as to where their headspace is at. I wouldn't be surprised if they went for something like Hybrid 3 or maybe like Rice 1. Both pretty, I don't want to say difficult in terms of Rice 1, but either they go for the accuracy test or they go for, are you comfortable actually playing 1K test in Hybrid 3.
Yeah, I mean, there is a plethora of different options on the board, as we can pretty much see with our very own eyes, especially for the likes of Mexico, for example. They've pretty much proven that they are really strong when it comes to a lot of these rice maps, and I would especially suspect, for that matter, that maybe I mean, Mexico is definitely a really well-rounded team as well, especially Croatia, kind of like circling around a bit in their own field. It's just going to have to really come down to the difference in skill when it comes to actual accuracy that may separate the 4 players that we're going to see on the board. Again, this is a 2v2 scenario, so the Mexicans are definitely going to expect to have some kind of leeway, or at least a pretty good front when it comes to their options, as opposed to Croatia, who I believe are still relatively good. It's just gonna have to come down to the picks that we're gonna go for, and it does seem like Hybrid 2 will get the first of our choices. It's gonna be Journey our first by Teasel.
Yeah, pretty middle of the road style pick for the hybrids, at least as far as the hybrids are concerned. Has a couple of difficulty spikes here and there, pretty straightforward. in terms of being able to sharpshoot the right stuff, and then the LNs aren't the most egregious thing in the world in comparison to some of the other maps in the pool. So a pretty comfortable style pick overall. It's just going to be a matter of who's going to step up. It looks like Asael is going to be the first one for Mexico with Ivan, and looks like it'll be Chris and Brainstorm for Croatia. And going into this, like I said, Croatia not a known commodity in around these parts. So seeing how they stack up against the likes of a known commodity in Mexico is going to be very interesting. This could give us a lot of information regarding if they're actually going to be able to step up to the plate, or if this is going to be basically Mexico kind of showing their experience.
Yeah, and especially for this one being one of the first matches that we're actually going to be witnessing of the 1K World Cup this year in general, I would definitely suspect that either player, pretty much all teams on this board, are definitely going to want to try and test the waters of what can be possible within this round, especially like, you know, kind of glossing over these qualifier results. Croatia has pretty much shown that they are really good at being able to equate when it comes to some of these hybrid maps, especially on Hybrid 2, Last of Me from the qualifiers, where it was Crix and Brainstorm that were playing. So we do see them playing in this match. The only issue is that it seems that map was really, really difficult, so it's going to be pretty hard to discern who was going to have a bit of an advantage, because we have seen that Mexico did really well in that qualifier as well. So, but this is one of the earlier stages of the entire tournament, so perhaps this match has yet to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And right out of the gate, Asael finding the first drop in the lobby, gonna put a bit of a damper on the score. There isn't a lot of notes in this chart in general, and being about 30 notes behind is gonna give Croatia a bit of a cushion to work with right now. 7,000 points. And as we continue on here, Brainstorm holding on to the 99.7, a full 0.5% ahead of either Mexican so far, with Chris not too far behind, holding on to the FC as well. Gonna help keep things in their favor for now. That being said, starting to make some inroads. Ivan gonna find a drop as well. So no FCs on the side of Mexico as we cross into the back half of the chart now. 17,000 points for Croatia with half the map left to go here.
Yeah, and that miss is really going to start anchoring the scoreline of Hivan down by a significant amount, given that we see that Crix and Brainstorm still have a really good advantage just going off of the consistency and combo alone. Another miss from Hivan to add fuel to the fire, as it's now 30,000 points in the advantage of Croatia. A miss comes out from Crix, traded out once again by Hivan. Then there's another miss coming out from Brainstorm as Mexico is looking to try and bring things back a bit, but Isel Masahola, despite the brainstorming that they've done to try and keep things a little afloat on the side of the Mexicans, it's going to be a little dicey for them as we just see some more explosions after explosions. Call it a literal Michael Bay movie, the way we're seeing so many misses everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Just trades back and forth. Asael finding the consistency amongst everybody in the lobby, but the amount of misses from Ivan kind of canceling things out down into that A-rank range. And Croatia, 44,000 points of a victory. Sure, both of them lost their FCs somewhere along the road, but this might be a bit of a wake-up call for Team Mexico here. The first break point going the way of the Croatians to make it 0-1 to start this match off.
Yeah, just Mexico winning that 100 roll, and despite the 84 ratio perfects that Isel Masahola had accumulated, it's just down to the misjudgments that really separates all the players on the board, especially in a 2v2 scenario. It's going to be really important to be able to take in mind, because of the fact that we've seen that Croatia has literally taken a breakpoint off of one of the stronger teams that we got on this tournament, which is the Mexicans, for example. So with the fact that Croatia had just won that breakpoint, this is gonna really cement them for their next pick and really allow for at least some additional assistance when it comes to the setup of this next pick, because they can pretty much go for anything on the board, whether it is potentially yet another hybrid, because this is really contrarian to what the qualifiers had said.
Yeah, this definitely does open up some options here. I could see something like LN1 potentially opening up, Hybrid 4 being a consideration, at least as far as more LN leaning type things if they wanted to stay there. if they wanted to go for Rice, the easiest thing could potentially be something like Rice 1 in terms of just pure consistency. And I mean, honestly, it really only fell apart for Mexico once the key ice section towards the end came through. Those runs of 1/4 notes really taking Ivan for a bit of a ride there towards the end. So
Yeah.
couple of options here now for Croatia. Definitely, like you were saying, not the start we were expecting, but hey, I'm all for it. I always like when the underdog, at least seed-wise, punches above their weight, and sure enough, Rice 1 gonna be the pick here for Croatia.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all love to see some of these underdog stories come about when it comes to teams tournaments that really have like a lot of people involved when it comes to the gameplay aspect, and especially with Catastrophe coming in for this next pick here, coming out from Crix's keyboard. This is definitely going to open up for a bit of an interesting scenario because Croatia, I would imagine that going off of the role coordination alternation that we had on the likes of Journey, he's going to open up for yet another interesting scenario, as it does seem like, especially on the likes of Arabesque of Diff from the qualifiers as well, this one opened up for even more interesting scenarios because this is also relatively close in terms of the seedings and the scores overall. So I'm honestly interested to see how this one can go, whether Croatia can uphold their efforts in trying to maintain even more points and even accumulate more than they can at least look for, because especially in this round, it would be really funny if they were to pull an upset this early. Definitely set that bold standard for them for the latter rounds as well.
For sure. So no substitutions for either team going into this. Very interesting. At least as far as match dynamics, you would think going from a hybrid into a Rice chart, there might be somebody more acquainted with this, but no, everybody feeling like they can swing a performance on this one. Steady starts for everybody across the board, no early misses this time around, so as things stand, just based on the accuracy alone, everybody above that 99.8 mark, and now we get to see who blinks first in this scenario.
Yeah, and when you blink first, it's going to be the Brainstormer that has to blink first. Unfortunately, their mind given into their heart, as it is going to be an early lead for the side of Mexico. 15,000 points, and just punctuate even further going off of another miss. This is only just the first quarter concluding though, so there's a lot of meat that the map has yet for us to feast on, as this is 240 minutes essentially. A very raw kind of map that we have on board as well, given its Rice characteristics and also just being very heavily stream oriented at 200 BPM. So kind of is pretty much one of those default picks I would imagine that a lot of players would have to wriggle their way through, as it does seem like Mexico is reciprocating that of what Croatia did, just pretty much returning the favor, as they're pretty much at a really objective scoreline.
Yeah, for sure. Rice 1 in this tournament series definitely has become a bit of a bread and butter type of pick for a lot of players, but right now the only player finding any difficulties to this right is Brainstorm, and it's led to this 50,000 point cushion for Mexico. So basically a handshake of picks to start this match off. Mexico saying like, hey, we got you guys, we'll pick something that you guys can win, and then you guys can just pick something for us, and we'll just make it a best of 7 from here on out. So with that being said, both Ivan and Asael finding a much better time on Rice 1 in comparison to Hybrid 2, and this is more like the Mexico I was expecting going into this match, where they can just sharpshoot the heck out of it. Ivan finding the drop on the last roll, transitioning into the outro, but I mean the damage is already done. It's 50,000 points of a cushion.
Exactly. Asael and Ivan had pretty much shook their hands on this pick alone, just knowing that they really had to try and bring things back into their favor, especially with the disrespect that Croatia dealt them on that first hybrid pick, which definitely spells a lot about how this match could potentially go, as things are kind of delving into unknown territory, as there isn't really much information that either side has to develop of each other besides for maybe these first two maps. I'll assume that because Mexico had also just returned the favor with their share of a breakpoint, I would assume they probably want to try and stray away from that of the hybrid category, or even the LNs, just maybe second guessing on how Hivan would deal with a lot of the LN coordination aspects and just being able to alternate enough with some of these tight gaps that aren't really the most friendly at faster tempos, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, drawing attention to some of these scores, I say with the 22 Black Flag performance, the 997K. Crick's not too far behind him, 994 in their own right, so they definitely do have the ability to swing out some scores here. They just need the supporting score to assist them, and Mexico gonna go for the SV pick now as we go back to their pick.
Alright, this is intriguing. We are the Gems, TF mapped by Kefi. This is the SV pick that we have of this round in particular, so especially like the main notion of the SVs, if you were to kind of grasp it for a little bit, don't get it twisted. These SV maps are a lot more difficult than you would initially anticipate because of the visual challenge and the memorization that are usually required within a lot of these picks alone. So I feel this is a bit of an interesting move on the board for Mexico to make, especially when they're going to have to pull out the horses, maybe try and see whether they can at least checkmate that of the Croatians, because especially with the amount of options that are open on the board, pretty much anything is up for grabs. It's just that the truth is unclear in terms of where the advantage really lands, be it in the rise for the Mexican or maybe outside of that for the Croatians even.
Yeah, this one's not the hardest thing in the world to read. It's there are a couple of melodic shakeups where if you're not tuned into what the song is doing, you can be caught out by some of the sudden changes. I definitely know I struggle with this one, mostly because I'm just bad at SV. But for these players, I imagine they've taken more than one look at it, I'm hoping. And we'll see exactly what it is. I feel like SV is one of those, like, either you can play it or you can't, and this one's really no exception here.
I mean, historically, SV maps have pretty much been known to be the death of a good amount of players. I mean, and we've seen it through the Mania World Cups, for example, like, years ago, whenever there was an SV map being thrown out into the limelight, and we just saw everyone just collapsing because not every single person really felt that they wanted to just simply run through it and just memorize a map that is usually not even the most physical, but more about the visual challenge, pretty much. A bit of a unique gimmick in its own right, as it seems to catch out the likes of Cricks. And we get a really early score advantage as well going into this map, as it does seem like both players in Croatia are going to collapse, and it's just punctuating the scoreline line by line, and it just keeps increasing up into the highs as we're pretty much approaching the 100 mark almost, although we got a bit of a stare down here.
Yeah, with maps like this, there aren't really that many notes to work with. So once you do find a miss, getting back over that 400 combo cap is basically impossible. And it does lead to the score being exacerbated like this. It feels like we're watching Standard when the score balloons this far out of proportion. That being said, I mean, it's not, it's not uncatchable by any stretch of the imagination. It's just when you don't have a supporting score to capitalize on mistakes from your opponent, then it just goes from bad to worse here. This is basically, are you comfortable with the SV? One side yes, the other side no. And even then, the yes is kind of like a yes with a question mark on it. 97, 96, it's a pretty standard fair SV score. If you're like middle of the road in terms of being able to play it, we get to the higher seeds and it's just like they're just nearly 100%ing this. It's just like, yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah. And on that note as well, like, the main thing about a lot of these SV maps is that, especially with this song in particular, this follows a very dubstep-oriented nature, which explains how a lot of the rhythm is kind of difficult to follow if you ain't really that acquainted with a lot of these rhythms that are present in the song. And despite it all, Acel and Hivan did choke a bit along the way, but it's still good enough of a performance given the performances that we saw of Croatia. Unfortunately, Vision Accept not looking to be the most comfortable whatsoever on this one. Kind of having a bit of a rough day switching in for this one, as Crix did what they could to be the strongest soldier of the Croatians, but unfortunately, the team consistency on the side of the Mexicans is what brings it to a 2-1 situation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be pretty. It doesn't have to be a 990k. It just has to be higher than your opponents at the end of the day. That's basically how the SV chart goes sometimes. But thankfully, it's the only SV map in the pool, so don't gotta worry about that anymore. You can kind of just say, all right, we were never gonna win that. Let's just mentally reset for the next one. And thankfully, it is Croatia's pick, so it'll be interesting to see what they decide to go for. Hybrid 2 worked out in their favor amazingly.
Yeah.
Now they've learned to maybe stray away from the rice. I could see something like Hybrid 4, maybe, if I was still trying to harken a guess as to where their headspace could be. The LNs are also pretty acceptable, maybe LN1, because LN2 is a bit of a release test, and you can find yourself just slipping 300s all over the board if you're not too careful on that pick. So,
yeah,
we'll just wait and see.
Yeah, I mean, with Hybrid 2, we could probably take a gander that Croatia is probably signing towards maybe some of these other picks that we have on the board, as they're going to be going into LN1, so that's going to be Tencent Men Retai. And okay, this is a bit of a bold choice, but honestly, I think I understand it in perspective, going off the fact that I'm assuming this is our more coordination pick, right?
Yeah, this is more standard fare, like 1/4 grid kind of release. It would be like if you had 4 keys on this would just be everything on a snapped grid. You're not having to like time a lot of crazy things. LN2 is the one that has like the variable like snap lengths, and it gets a little wonky. Like I said, you can just drop 300s because you're over or under holding on any given LN. This one,
yeah,
once you get in a groove, you gotta just ride it. You ride it to the end of the song. There's maybe 1 or 2 choke points in this chart. There's a couple of bursts that can catch you out if you're not too careful, so definitely got to watch out for those. See if any of the players fall victim to it. We're going to see Snow check in for Mexico for their first appearance in this match.
Okay. Wait, that's actually really interesting. I've never really seen Snow play any of these wonky maps. Are they like new to it? That's like new news to me. Holy damn.
They've been around. It's been my memory is that of a goldfish. Sometimes when it comes to these tournaments, there's been so many variations of it that I just lose track of who's played in what. But I know I've definitely seen them around. That being said, we'll see how they do on the LNs. This is, like I said, about as standard fare as you can get for an LN chart. Everybody gonna skip through the small introduction. Gonna get right on into it here. See if Mexico can get another breakpoint here, or Croatia can maintain parity. Like I said, this was basically boiled down to a best of 7 after those opening 2 picks.
Absolutely, and especially at a point like this where it's now Croatia's time to try and make a move on the board once again. It is good that they're trying to aim for some of the picks that are fall into the rice category just solely because of the fact that they want to try and ensure they can encapsulate an advantage as soon as possible, especially with Snow coming in for the side of the Mexicans, trying to tag alongside the side of Asal Master Holla. It is going to be down to a lot of these parents to try and discern who has an advantage, and so far so good. Everyone's basically on the same page. We have no visible advantage, especially with this one coming out of joke-free. We're just going to see a bit of a paradigm shift on the side where things are going to go into the advantage of that of Croatia for a little bit. Just a few thousand points.
Yeah, during that last KI section, Snow picking up a couple of 200s. There are some doublets that can get a little tricky, along with some 1/6 bursts. Everybody managing to, I was about to say, managed to make it through relatively comfortably. Snow going to be picking up the first drop of the lobby, going to help extend this lead for Croatia. 24,000 points to the good. Both their players holding on to their respective FCs, and pretty good accuracy in the grand scheme of things as well. Snow just not jiving with this section. Quarter of the map left to go. Still all to play for. It's definitely not uncatchable, but it can feel like that with the amount of misses not getting traded back here.
Yeah, with such a volatile map as this, it's just a lot of the grace control that you need to just maintain throughout sections like this one, for example, which just reopens wounds that sent snow over the moon, as it's literally just another miss, and that is just going to seal the deal as it stands. 90,000 points to the advantage of Croatia, and now it's tied 2-all. 96 points is the difference maker, as Asylum also, despite their 69 ratio, nice. It's just, how do you even lose with that? Like, what?
You gotta have the supporting score. I mean, the balance between the two players is very important in 1K, because only one of you needs to have a shaky-ish performance to completely throw things off course. It's like, yes, you might have the better ratio, but the team balance needs to be there. We've seen it go both ways in this match already, where strong performance on one end, no supporting score, gives the point over to the other team. We see another example of it here, and I mean, Croatia might have something here with these LN hybrids to look more into as this match progresses. Mexico has 2 more rice picks. They have the speed map as well. And both teams might actually fancy their chances still. Mexico up to pick next. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw something like Rice 2 or Rice 3. Heck, even the speed pick, for as volatile as that can be, just get that discomfort from the Croatians on that pick.
I mean, honestly, the speed pick would be really fun to just throw out on the board. I mean, I would assume that is probably one of the harder picks that we have on the board, and especially jogging off my memory from the likes of 1K World Cup last year, and also Joke from the previous year as well. 2 different sides of the coin. I pretty much remember that the speed picks vividly were just some of the harder Rice maps overall, and I'll definitely assume that, like, I don't know, just going off the fact that I recognize 2 of the other songs in the main Rice category, 2004 Breakup and Over the Limit, I would definitely assume that maybe this could be a pick that Mexico can delve into if they really need to try and just settle their status, try and see whether they can punctuate themselves and just posture up in a situation like this where, you know, it can get really dirty real easily when there's only just 4 picks left of the board to make here.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a lot to think about for this next pick. It feels like the most crucial one, because you don't want to give over a break point with the opportunity to make it a match point situation, and it's going to be Rice 2, so 2004 Breakup going to be the pick here for Mexico. I mean, given how accurate they were on Catastrophe, this feels like the logical next choice. Not too difficult, just a consistency check, not as many streams, but definitely some varied rhythms, but ultimately no real, like, pain points in comparison to something like LN1, where you had those bursts, those doublets that could catch you out. So we'll just wait to see how they do. Yvonne going to check back in for the Mexicans here.
Indeed. So we're gonna have to, I guess it makes the most sense to bring back Yvonne back to the side of the Mexicans, just see whether they can just try and prove that the Rise power, because especially for Mexico, I would assume they found their footing within the Rise category, especially with Croatia having taken 2 points outside that category alone. So we're gonna probably see a bit of a war within the Rise maps, and outside that as well with our Ellens and Hybrids that are currently available, as there are no bans from what we've seen. So pretty much at this point, it's a full Nelson warfare between whoever can just pick the right map and just ensure that they can do it well. With 2004 Breakup, this one, like you mentioned, Sparky, this is going to be our more rhythm-centric broken stream map, so definitely is going to open up for an interesting scenario, and definitely is going to challenge that of the accuracy a little more. This is about less about the consistency, but more about, in contrary, just trying to see whether it's just a check for anyone that goes into it, whether they can just play it well. Okay, yeah.
For sure. So getting on into it, everything here, basically any bursts are all 1/4 based. It's just, can you do your best to make sure you don't overhit on some of those broken streams. And so far, nobody being caught out by it too much. Chris lagging behind in terms of overall accuracy, just picking up maybe a couple errant 200s or just a plethora of 300s. Plenty of time to rebuild that, but it is going to give Mexico a bit of a cushion. Do expect to see that shrink as Chris rebuilds their accuracy and if Yvonne drops to the clutches of like Brainstorm, their counterpart, but Oh, Brainstorm on the transition out of that section, gonna find the first miss in the lobby, and that should help stabilize this Mexican score. 14,000 points as we continue on. Brainstorm needing to get back up their 400 combo cap, but this song doesn't give you much to work with in terms of climbing up quickly, so expect to see this lead grow for the Mexicans now.
Yeah, especially with the song being around 3 minutes long. This is perhaps one of the longer maps we've seen this round so far, and especially here, there's a lot of control that you have with various of these streams. Havon is still doing their best to act, but that's going to be a miss straight, even if it is neutralized by that miss going off from Brainstorm, whose node speed is quite literally as fast as me plummeting an apple down to the ground. Like, how do you read this?
Yeah, it's always a wonder when you see players have high scroll speeds, but it's also that double-edged sword. It's like, yes, it's going down as quickly as you're maybe used to in other key modes or other game modes even, but after a while, if there are enough 1/4s just littering the screen, it can be a bit of a nightmare to read through. I know I personally find myself hesitating or like flinching at nodes coming down that quickly, so yeah, it's the game you play, and right now Brainstorm not winning that one as Mexico looking very strong on their pick here. 25,000 points to work with. He has a couple of flubs and fumbles from Ivan, but Yavasail with that 99.9% accuracy basically able to shield the worst of the mistakes from their teammates. So quarter of the map left to go. It's looking very good for Mexico here.
Exactly, with Croatia just doing what they can to try and at least okay, I keep trying to say it every time, but yes, okay, Croatia doing what they, yeah, Croatia is doing what they can to. Croatia was doing what they can to try and bring things into the advantage of themselves, especially with the team score being consistent, but unfortunately they had to be faced by themselves from the next 5 years or so in this very webcomic we call the 1K World Cup, as it's going to be our third point for the Mexicans going off of Asal's tremendous 49 perfect V1SS on 2004 breakup. That is a really strong point to take off the board, as it's going to be allowing now the Mexicans to be able to breathe from, you know, the fact that there is still a lot of options left on the board, and Croatia still has those options on the board as well. So it's just going to have to come down to careful consideration on what to go for next. Croatia cannot step a foot wrong here, as it's going to result in them just basically almost losing to a match point.
Yeah, a critical break point now or critical point in general for Croatia to consider here. Mexico passed their test. Rice 2 seemed to be the correct option there for them. And I mean, we've been saying, Croatia has opened up a lot of options for themselves. If I were to harken a guess, I'm normally I say LN2, but with the varied release lengths, it might be one of those cases you get lost in the sauce a little bit when it comes to all the 1-2 snappings, that I worry for the scroll speed causing some confusion on it. And then Hybrid 4 was going to be the next option. Hybrid 4 is going to be the pick for Croatia. Arguably the most quote-unquote standard pick left in the pool in comparison to the other hybrids. It's definitely calm enough at times where the runs don't cause an issue where you're just getting flooded with notes if you're going to be playing at a scroll speed that high. So yeah, we'll be interested to see who comes in for Mexico. We saw Snow on LN1. We've seen Ivan for Hybrid 2. They stepped out. I imagine it's the reason why SLS is asking for the timeout, maybe just giving him a second, maybe, I don't know, restroom break, I imagine.
I mean, honestly, anyone could just use a bit of a restroom break. It's always good to have those intact when you're in the middle of a bit of a moment that really is just pressing on you with tension, as it does seem like, you know, because the timeouts are usually going to stack out after the ready timer is basically finishing, is pretty much going to, like, I guess we could just expect Asal to just sit around, just enjoy themselves, maybe enjoy the song for a little bit in the lobby as we wait for the second piece of the Mexican team to be complete, as I'm assuming Croatia is going to stick to their guns with the likes of Chris and Brainstorm just carrying that of the Croatians, and especially to the point where it's going to start mattering a lot more. They're going to have to try and pull their weight with this one being a pick of their own, and perhaps one of the last ones they can make as well, because this is where there's only really like, what, 3 picks that are left on the board, and Croatia's going to have to win at least maybe 2 of these points to be able to bring it to a tiebreaker if it has to be forced.
For sure. And Round on Q Ivan is back. Gonna see if they can redeem their performance from Hybrid 2, equalize the scoreboard against Croatia. And like I was saying, this is critical portion for Croatia now. Mexico was able to secure that 3rd point, and giving over a break point here, going back to Mexico's pick, not a position you want to be in. So we'll see if they have the mettle to withstand this one. There are definitely some tricky sections in this chart, some doublets going into triplets, following some of the lyrics in the song. Gonna be interesting to see if the players can adapt to it. Outside of that, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, not really much else we can gather from a pure sight read alone, as all there is to just deal with the information that we're given, deal the cards we're given, and that's exactly what both these teams are going to be going in for here. The same Starwood duo we've been seeing strike against each other from the side of the Mexicans and the Croatians as well. Things are looking quite equal for the time being, but this one being 3 minutes and 22 seconds long, this is going to amplify a lot of these mistakes a little further, going to act as that really strong consistency test that I think Croatia is looking for, especially with the LNs that we have introduced here. There's going to be a lot of short LNs incorporated with some of these triplets and doublets as well, so that's going to make things a little tougher, as despite Mexico having a bit of an advantage, they're going to drop slightly until that miss from Brainstorm comes out.
Oh, and the drop from Chris as well, just compiling for Croatia through this introduction. No trades back from Mexico. And, as I say that, Ivan going to find the drop in return, but 3-1 in comparison, 3-2 now, as we see the lead begin to stabilize in favor of Mexico. 20,000 points to work with this early on. There's still plenty of time for a recovery run, but they're going to need to keep these misses down. Chris cannot afford to find another one. They were holding on to the accuracy, keeping Asael in check going into this next section, but with them falling, there's nobody left to contest. Asael with that 99.8 going to be able to just continue on their island. 27,000 points, giving Ivan more than enough time to recover their score back up to 99%. Brainstorm back up at that 400 combo cap, going to be able to try and stem the bleeding, but I turn the spotlight, finding the drop, and this was the concern when it came to this particular pick. These triplets can get a little arduous after a while, just misreading some of these sections, because it changes what you're expecting every so often, and if you're not ready for them, that's where the trip ups are. Mexico is doing more than enough to double that advantage. 44,000 points with a third of the map left to go here.
Exactly, increasing the scoreline tenfold, as we're basically just seeing so many chokes coming out from the side of Croatia. Brainstorm still not looking the most confident on this pick in particular, despite this being on their own map. This is what I was saying, that it's with the way that these remainder of the picks are going, and the fact that, majority of what we have left is just LN, or just LNs and hybrids especially, they're gonna have to really try and at least make the best out of all of them, because if this hybrid goes in the favor of Mexico, which it pretty much already is, despite all these misses that we're all seeing on the board, is pretty much just down to seeing whether you can remain the most consistent on this as possible, as there's just a lot of these really tight releases, a lot of these really quick LNs you need to immediately let go of as soon as you need to release, and despite it all, Hivan and Asael, despite all their misses, have been proven really strong on all these patterns, especially going into the final few seconds where the damage has already been done from the side of Croatia. It's just really hard to recover from here, from 80,000 points.
Yeah, and that's really the thing there that you touched on when it comes to the misses from Mexico. The fact that they're able to mitigate the damage that comes from those misses, the fact that it's just like a singular slider break and then nothing else, or a dropped note here or there. It's not entire strings being lost. More than enough being done here to secure that match point situation. I wouldn't be surprised if we just saw the instant Rice 3 or Speed 1, because they've had a very clear accuracy advantage when it comes to those styles of picks. It's just a matter of what they want to try their hand at.
Mexico, you will pick Rice Free or the Speed pick.
I mean, Hybrid 3 is also a consideration, but it's such a wonky pick in comparison to all the other hybrids in terms of that being like a raw technical pick that they might just not want to bother with it. And sure enough, Rice 3 going to be the pick. Path of least resistance. I feel like if the speed pick had maybe like 200 to 300 more notes, it might be up for consideration. But the fact that it's so short might lead some teams away from it, because one miss and you're dropping like 20,000 points.
Yeah, exactly. That's just the thing with Wonky, though. And now, like, the fact that it's pretty much just mainly reduced to how the ranking criteria used to be, like, what, 13 years ago. This is literally the scoreline, and just the way misses work is just so much sensitive when it comes to this type of niche alone, that is all the more difficult for players and teams alike to even maintain competition when it comes to maps that, you know, are pretty much just raw consistency tests, as this one may be, as it seems like Mexico's going to try and go over the limit and try and get that final point that they need to just seal the deal on the side of Croatia, finally send them down into the losers bracket and just go beyond what is expected of them. As we see Asal, Monster, and Kevan join in for one last time. Crix and Brainstorm going to try and see whether they can take a point on this, because this is going to be a really important one for them if they want to remain in that winners bracket, of course.
Yeah, just trying to get to that next pick potentially here. Like, what really matters at the end is just playing through the chart. Anything can happen on these styles of picks. You might think it's like, oh, we have it in the bag, we have better accuracy, but team performance is very, very important here, and it's just, can you hold your nerve? That last point's always the hardest one to get, and right now Croatia holding on to a very slight advantage. As I say that, 200 coming through to equalize things here, and this is probably going to be the name of the game here. Who blinks first? Who finds that first miss as we progress? Asael holding on to a near 100% performance, going to keep things in Mexico's favor for the time being as the first quarter of the map finishes up here.
Exactly. I mean, especially how we're seeing every player on the board, dude. No one is even okay. All right, thanks, Chris. Anyways.
That's not the one you wanted to find the miss.
Exactly. I'm like, bro. I was literally about to go on a bit of a monologue as usual about how players are doing so well, and then this just happens. Anyways, 11,000 points into the advantage of the Mexicans once again, past the first third, as so far so good. Asael and Hivan are the two that just make sure that they are doing well all throughout this pick alone, and they've not even made a single mistake so far. They have two misses to work with now that led from the likes of Crix alone, and that's just ultimately going to make it harder for the Croatians to be able to make it back. If it does come down to misses, they're going to have to be requiring the Mexicans to take misses of their own, as Hivan's the first to do that. That's one.
There's one, but I mean, it's been the story on all these Rice picks. It's like Ivan finds a couple human mistakes. Like I said, they managed to do a really good job mitigating the damage from those drops when they do come through, and Asael just on an island on their own, untouchable. Chris has been their closest competitor on the Croatian side, but they're the ones finding the misses for this particular pick. Means that the recovery run is that much rougher. Brainstorm doing everything in their power to mitigate that 99.6% highest score that they've put up on any of these picks in a hot minute. Trying their best. There's a quarter of the map left to go. There's still some things to potentially read through that could trip up anybody. Ivan finding another drop that shrinks the lead to 17,000. Both Croatians having some combo to work with. Chris needs to get back by that 400 combo cap. There's not a lot of time left, but 13,000 points is the margin now. Can they pull through here?
Exactly. It's going to be one of the most important points for Croatia to try and do their best. They cannot afford any single misses whatsoever now, as Devon, despite these blasts getting in the way, the scoreline is just decreasing all throughout, and that's going to be a major drop coming out from Croatia somewhere that didn't even come from a miss. It's 14,000 points in the advantage of Mexico, and at this point, Sparky, I think this is going to do it. It's way too late to do it. Oh my days, no.
Oh my goodness. All right, that was a bit of a heart-and-mouth moment. 11,000 points. Mexico had it. No, there was nothing to worry about. We were all just clenching, trying to see. Hopefully they hang on. But, I mean, hey. Take a deep exhale. Mexico manages to hang on there at the very end. Asael, once again, a V1SS to guarantee that point and the match 5-2. A valiant effort from the Croatians. Definitely overperforming at least what I was expecting. Like I said, not a known commodity, and for a debut performance, I don't think there's anything they should be ashamed of. That was a hell of a performance from them. Very, very excited to see what they do next weekend. And as for Mexico, congratulations to them. They move on to the quarterfinals in the winners bracket here.
Absolutely. Things are looking quite good for Mexico, as they did end up getting a few scratches going throughout this match alone, but they pulled through enough to ensure that they can assert themselves, that they are a force to be reckoned with, and we'll try to prove that going into next week when they have to face between the United Kingdom or Greece. That is going to open for some interesting scenarios where it is also to be seen who Croatia is going to have to face against, because with one loss in their bag, they're going to have to try and make it back with a lot of points to be able to try and assert themselves, to remain in the tournament for much longer. But there is still time to decide whether that can happen. This is going to do it for our Saturday block of matches. Only 2 matches, quick and easy. Same score between Australia, Taiwan, then Mexico and Croatia. We've got a bunch of matches happening tomorrow, though. If you want to keep on watching that, what do you say, Sparky?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a lot to look forward to. United Kingdom versus Greece. Definitely watch out for that one, and plenty more to come on Sunday. But until then, we'll catch you guys later.
Toodaloo.